It's difficult to say. I still at this point don't even know what speciality I want to do.
Yeah.
So it's early days, but I'd like to think I would stay in the NHS. That is my goal. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I know a few of my friends, they're like either junior doctors now or working and teaching. And I think it is like, it does, the country's not in a...
It is a shame, but most people don't go into medicine with the intention of leaving. So,
no, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you can only really know how difficult it is
when you're there.
Yeah. I think you can only really have a say in the matter if you're in that position, whereas I think a lot of people like to make comments, but it's easier when you're not actually a doctor or a teacher.
Yeah.
Back to Cambridge and medicine. So medicine at Cambridge, can you tell us a bit more about the course, the structure? Like, because I heard something about how it's more of a traditional course. If you could go into that a bit more.
So if you're looking at different medical schools across the UK, there tends to be 2 or 3 different styles of teaching, and Oxbridge is considered traditional. Some of the others are considered what's known as integrated, and then there's problem-based learning. And I would like to think most universities actually kind of do a mixture of all 3, but some of them will focus more predominantly on one or the other. So Cambridge, the course structure is preclinical for 3 years and 3 years clinical. So I'm in my clinical stage now. And what that means is the first 3 years are all based in lecture theatres, lab skills, practical classes, seminars, small group teaching. And then the last 3 years, you're basically in hospital the whole time or on GP placement. So it's very sort of a tale of 2 halves, and it changes a lot after 3rd year. And the same at Oxford. And then some of the other, particularly the London universities and some of the other Russell Group, they do what's called an integrated course, although a lot of them are changing over to PBL, but I'll talk about that in a minute. So integrated is sort of a lot of lectures in the first few years, but you're still getting that clinical exposure from day one. So you might start off with a GP practice placement just to ease gently in. You might do a bit of shadowing, and then as the years go on, you kind of decrease the proportion of lectures and increase the proportion of contact time in hospital slowly over the 5 or 6 years. And then problem-based learning, it kind of has that as well. But in terms of the teaching, it's a bit more student-led. So you're given a case maybe on the Monday morning, and then you'll go away and you'll be given a research group, and your little group will go away, research the case, come up with what you think the diagnosis and management plan is, and then you'll meet again later on in the week, have some teaching relating to that case, and then on the Friday afternoon, you might come back and discuss the final diagnosis and management plan, having been taught about that over the week. But it's a lot more research and self-directed driven from day one, and you will still have placements and stuff, but it's all linked to kind of the case that you're given early on, hence the kind of problem-based approach. So Cambridge doesn't really do any of that. And if you like group work, PBL is probably a good place to look. But if you're looking for lectures and teaching and very, as you say, traditional style, then Cambridge and Oxford definitely offer that.
Nice. Wow. So when you if you don't mind me asking, which unis did you apply for, and what was your thinking when trying to decide between, if I'm right in saying, traditional style, problem-based medicine course and integrated?
Yeah. So for me, I knew I didn't really want to do problem-based learning. I looked at a couple of unis that, so I applied to Exeter, Nottingham, Imperial and Cambridge, and most of them all of them were integrated or traditional. But then even when I looked at, actually only went to open days for 5, the only other one I looked at was Southampton. And Southampton and Exeter both had a degree of problem-based learning in their course, more so than the others, but still classed their whole course as integrated. And I think the thing with the problem-based, especially the ones that focus really heavily on it, is a lot of group work from day one. And if you're not used to that, then I think for me, I'd been to math. I went to a massive sixth form, 600 students doing A-level maths in 1 year group. So every lesson kind of felt like a lecture because the ratio of students to teachers was very skewed. So I just felt like being at a university that focused on lectures would suit my kind of learning style. And also I didn't think it was a very particularly productive way for me to learn personally, doing group work when we're all brand new to the course. I just thought it would be quite slow to get going, and I really wanted to be immersed in the kind of teaching aspect from day one. And I just think sometimes looking at one case over a week feels a little bit slow for me, but I can understand that for some other people, having that very clinical approach from day one where you're looking at medical cases, I think actually if that's what you really are passionate about, then problem-based learning is a really good way to approach a degree. But I just felt personally I liked the idea of being a uni student that does lectures. And also I didn't like the idea of being a medic that was separate from other uni students. I think it's really easy for some medics who are really passionate about their degree, they would quite like the idea of they are a medical student, that's their identity. Whereas for me, I wanted to go to uni and have that kind of more normal uni experience whilst being a medical student. And I think the traditional courses, and to a degree the integrated courses where you're still in lectures, you feel a little bit more like how all of the other uni students are taught, which I liked.
Nice, yeah, because I know that some unis, like the medics, like even their accommodation blocks might be different to like the other courses, whereas in Cambridge, you're situated in the college just like everyone else.
Yeah, and sometimes you even share lectures. Like in my first 3 years here, I had lectures with vets and natural sciences students. And then in my third year, which I guess we can talk about later, I did a kind of different course entirely, and that was all mixed up even more. And that just really appealed to me because I was like, I'm going to have my whole career ahead of me as a doctor. So it'd be nice to feel that a little bit more like a normal student for as long as I can. But some people absolutely know from day one they want to be on the wards and seeing patients. So if that's you, then I would probably suggest considering somewhere else.
Oh yeah, I see what you mean now. Yeah, because you can kind of choose to kind of like be a trainee doctor immediately at 18, or you could choose a course that's kind of pushes delayed, delayed for like a few years at least. Are there any like favourite lecture courses that you have?
When I was a first year, my first year was during 2020. I'm that old now, and the lectures were all online. But I had supervisions in person, so that's like small group teaching that supplements the lectures. And my supervisor for physiology, he was great. He'd just been through Cambridge as a medical student himself, and so he gave us a lot of really useful advice and was really empathetic towards us because he knew what it was like to be a student. And I think that really also made me have a greater appreciation for the subject he was supervising, just because I felt like he was teaching it to us really well in a way that we understood. So physiology was great. But I think also Cambridge is really unique in that it still does dissection for anatomy, like full body cadaveric dissection. And that was a really hands-on approach. It was really quite daunting on the first day because of the pandemic, we were all isolated from the other students. So it was like one student to one cadaver, whereas pre-pandemic it was maybe 8 students. So on day one, it's just you going in there on your own, which is quite a weird experience, but also so immersive and felt so unique and so crazy. And I really enjoyed anatomy as well. Although I did struggle. It's a difficult course, but I did really enjoy it. Yeah.
Nice. Wow. Sounds like a lot to learn. I mean, I guess that's pointing out the obvious.
Yeah.
With medicine. So if like anyone who doesn't know, or what does a day in the life look like for a medic? Let's say like pre-clinical, so the first 3 years. And then clinical maybe.
Sure. Yeah. So although it's split 3 years and 3 years, pre-clinical and clinical, it's really 2 years, 1 year and 3 years.
Okay.
So the first 3 years are the first 2 years of those 3 are very medical based. So you'll have anatomy, physiology and biochemistry, a bit of statistics and ethics in your first year. And then in your second year, it's more like pathology, neurology, neuroscience, it's a bit of psychology and psychiatry. There's definitely some other things I'm missing from second year. It's a big course. Immunology, pharmacology and reproductive health. So there's a lot more going on in second year. I'm pretty sure I'm still missing something. We had a lot of exams. And then the third year at Cambridge is really cool because you get to choose from a range of different subjects. It's the same at a few other universities. I think Imperial does it. Oxford have integrated courses or integrated intercalation. So that's basically 1 year where you do a fast track of a degree. And
this is intercalation?
Yeah, so this is the intercalated year. At Cambridge, it's the third year. Some of the other medical schools, it'll be in your 4th year or 5th year. But at Cambridge, you can choose basically any subject you like, as long as you have the A-levels that would allow you to take that course. So I did history and philosophy of science, which was so different to the first 2 years, but also really fun. And it's technically classed as a natural sciences course. So there are a lot of other science students who take it, but there are also people doing history course and economics and philosophy and all sorts of students all joining onto this one course for a year. So that was still lectures, but it was a lot more essays. The exams were all essays, and I did a dissertation as well. But I had some medic friends who did pathology in their third year.
What was your dis one?
It was on climate anxiety and should we reframe it? Is anxiety a good term for it? Because if it's usually with anxiety, if you take a very like psychiatric approach, it's a clinical diagnosis where someone has irrational or sort of overinflated fears and phobias and worries. But climate anxiety is, in my opinion, quite a justified response to actually a very real problem.
Yeah.
And if you act on usually if you have generalized anxiety, if you act on those fears and those thoughts, it actually makes the problem worse, and it just spirals unless you get help or intervention in some way and you can get better. Whereas with climate anxiety, if you actually fix the problem or you act on those thoughts, it would actually fix the problem to an extent. And I think it's a very interesting term that we've used because it almost makes out that people with climate anxiety are being irrational, because anxiety as a medical term is quite irrational, but it's very different. It's not irrational at all. It's actually a sensible way to think. And it's, so I looked at the justifications of why should we reframe it based on, like, a big fear for people with climate anxiety is that governments aren't doing enough. And then I did a kind of case study into what the UK government has and hasn't done, and greenwashing and their failings in the past with public health, like I looked at the Change for Life programme. So it was a big project, but I really enjoyed it. And then I did a little other essay on COVID vaccination as well, and kind of the ethics of vaccinating carers when we could have vaccinated other more vulnerable people. And it was a crazy year. And I loved it a lot. And I did a bit of history of medicine as well. So it was ethics, law, medicine, history. Yeah. Very different.
Wow, that sounds really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, climate anxiety I've never heard the term, but I think, it's very justified. It could just be called climate concern.
Yeah, exactly. That's fundamentally what I think it is. But third year was very, very different. And the nice thing with Cambridge is the way the courses, all of the undergraduate courses are structured, means that it's a kind of year-on-year basis. And every year, most students either learn something in more depth or they learn completely new content. So it's very easy to transition onto a different course in the third year. Whereas I think at Oxford, you have to stay in the kind of biomedical sciences. And again, at the other universities, the other medical schools, if you intercalate, you usually have to stay within medical sciences. At Cambridge, if you want to, you don't have to change. So I made the decision to do history and philosophy of science. But I had a lot of friends, like I said, that did anatomy or physiology, pharmacology. So it gives you a lot of flexibility, and that's a really nice thing. And then you get to graduate after third year with all your friends, because most of your friends from undergrad will have just done 3-year course. So that's nice. You get to go to graduation dinner. And then you progress to the clinical school, which is very different.
Nice. Wow. So I think some students would also want to know, like say if I'm a medicine student, a medic, and I wake up, what is my day looking like?
Yeah.
Like, how many lectures are there? Am I spending the all afternoon in the lab? How often, etc.? Am I in the library?
So I'll go through, I think the busiest year that you'll have as a student, especially at Cambridge as a medic, is second year. So day in the life in second year is probably quite a good insight. So I rowed, or I was a member of the boat club in my second year. So I would wake up at 6:30, head out on the water. And funnily enough, quite a lot of medics seem to row. Weird thing that we do. So I'd go down with my friends to the boat club for 6:45 start time, be on the water at 7, row for an hour and a bit, get on my bike, and then about 8:30, leave the boat club, go straight to lectures for 9 a.m. Usually you'll have a 9 a.m. lecture, maybe one at 11 till 12, so 2 in the morning with an hour break in between, and then you'll have lunch. You could come back to college for that. Some people eat in the dining hall here, which is quite nice. In my second year, I lived kind of up the hill, so I would usually stay in town because I'd have things on the afternoon. So come back to college for lunch. Maybe if I have an online practical, so sometimes they're still online, post-COVID, they're just kind of stuck around that way. Go to the library for a couple hours and do that. If it's an in-person practical, go to the lab in town. Usually those are 2 to 3 hours long. And then maybe have a supervision after that. So it's quite a lot of contact hours. Supervision maybe 4 or 5 o'clock in the evening. And then around 6 o'clock, come to college, have dinner, or go home and have dinner. And then depending on what day of the week it is, might go out clubbing with friends afterwards. So Cambridge club nights tend to be midweek, is like Wednesday night. It's quite a big one. And then go off to bed hopefully not too late if I've got rowing again the next morning. But it's a pretty busy day. There is time to see friends, and definitely over lunchtime. And with that 1 hour break in the morning, it's quite a nice time to get a coffee with someone or work together.
Oh, I see.
So there's definitely time to kind of see people, but you do have to be quite clever about when you do it. You can't really be missing lectures because then you'll get behind quite quickly. And supervisions for medics tend to have 4 or 5 a week minimum, and sometimes you'll have them on weekends. So you will have a lot of contact hours, and they will tend to be in the evenings just because your daytimes are so full of timetabled lectures and practicals. So you will have less free time than a lot of the other students, but it's still definitely like a fun time. And I miss the undergrad life quite a lot.
Yeah. So you have 4 or 5 supervisions a week?
Yeah,
Really?
Definitely in first year and in second year as well. Third year was, you'll never have that many again in third year. Yeah.
You get your money's worth.
Yeah, your peaks in second year for sure, and you really do get your money's worth.
Yeah, damn. So talking about workload, I think as you're like breaching onto the topic, I think students, they're thinking about medicine, aren't too sure about it because they're worried about the workload, and they're worried about whether they're going to be able to have time to do other things. Just want to know what kind of things have you managed to do alongside your degree, and what would you say to those students who are thinking can I do societies and have a social life as well as a medicine degree?
So I think I'm speaking to someone that's done a lot of extracurriculars, and I'm probably actually unrepresentative of most people. But I guess the fact that I'm still here and have gone through the course, having done so many, does mean you can definitely do them. So my main one probably over the last 4 years has been rowing. That's very much early morning focused. And if you don't row, you're not losing out on that time. So in terms of things most people do in the daytime, there's other stuff. So every college at Cambridge pretty much every college has an annual kind of end of year celebration. We call them Mabels. Ours is a June event because it's a little bit smaller. And I was on the committee for that for 2 years, running the Instagram account and the Facebook and the website. So publicity officer. So that was one thing. Every college has their own kind of like a students' union. They're usually called JCRs for the undergrads and MCR for the postgrads. I've sat on both committees for those. As a JCR rep, I ran the accommodation ballot, but you can do loads of different things. It's a very cool, fun way to get involved in making an impact at the college. You can run sports societies or just attend sports societies. So I've run yoga sock here for a few years now, and that's in the evenings, so it doesn't clash with rowing. You can get involved in music and drama productions. I don't think I've done any of those yet, but I'm a member of Music Society and I sometimes play on the piano here. So there's probably loads of other things you can do. There's a language school in Cambridge and they do language classes. I think you can pay for really regular classes or just go to a few. Sometimes the colleges fund them if it's relevant to your course. So I know people that have done that through their degree. And then there's a lot of degree related extracurriculars as well. So I'm quite interested in climate health, hence the kind of climate anxiety stuff in my third year. And I was on the One Health committee, which is linking veterinary medicine and public health and global health, climate stuff. So I've been on the committee for that as well. So there's probably loads of other things I'm forgetting, but you can definitely get involved. And I think every year I've been here, I've done at least 3 or 4 extracurriculars. The newest one I've got is Cam FM. So I'm hosting a radio show now every week, which is fun.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I feel like I'm put on the spot now.
No, this is very different. Our podcast's different. But yeah, I have a Cam FM show. So that's a student run radio channel. Yeah, it's good. It's good fun.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, you're doing loads. I mean, I think like a normal routine, if someone can keep on top of their work, is when they're working 9 to 5 and 9 to 6, and then you have the evening off. I think, as you were saying, as long as you manage to attend your lectures and not fall behind.
That's definitely how I did it, because especially as an undergrad at Cambridge, the terms are really short here. So your 8 weeks will be busy, but then you'll have a 6-week break where you can do loads of revision and consolidation. And that was all that got me through, was kind of really using the holidays. And it does mean you don't really get a long rest. And if you're someone that needs to rest in your holidays, then maybe consider having less on in new terms. You don't have to revise as much in the holiday. But my view was if I'm only here for 8 weeks, I'm going to throw myself into everything. And I find that I'm lucky I have quite a high social battery, so I can keep going for 8 weeks and then revise in the holiday, and it still feels like I'm doing okay. So I think it's a very personal thing. I have friends that wouldn't want that. But if you want to get involved, you definitely can, even with a busy schedule and contact hours. It's certainly doable, but you might be a bit tired.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I don't know when you sleep with that schedule.
Yeah.
But I think you really make a really good point that because you were saying you worked out what works for you, and it might not work for someone else. I think the issues of students is when you're comparing yourselves to every single other person, there's always a feeling of you could always be doing more.
Yeah.
But what works for them might not work for you. And I think also students don't realize that other people are probably thinking the same thing about whatever you're doing.
I mean, imposter syndrome is so huge. And I still have it now. And I've definitely struggled to find, I think people have different attitudes to work in Cambridge, and some people, especially those that are involved in the teaching and examination element, might think that you should be here to focus on your studies. But if you want a different experience where you're here to make fun and make connections and have a great time, then you can definitely do that. But you just have to be a little bit prepared that if you've grown up with academic validation and being told that grades are really important, and then when you come to Cambridge you struggle a little bit more, that's fine. But you just have to be prepared. That might happen.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's quite amazing how like someone who's like putting a lot of time in their studies and they're enjoying their studies will like envy someone who is like doing like a silly amount of extracurriculars, and then the person who's doing the silly amount of extracurriculars will envy the person who's doing really well in the studies. I guess the grass always seems to look greener on the other side.
Definitely.